Hello, everyone. It's Sam and Fee, and we're back for another one of our midweek musings.
Hello.
And it is a special one today because it's a year since we did our very first midweek musings. Can you believe it?
No, no, I actually can't.
No,
I can't believe that that's a whole year.
it's crazy, isn't it?
And I know it just, I think time has just sort of changed somehow in the
No, I'm totally
last,
with you on that.
it's just bizarre, absolutely bizarre. Um, yeah, so a year on, and yeah, where are we now
No,
in
well,
comparison to then?
we both watched it back, didn't we? To have a look at our first one and see what was going
I'll
on.
add the
And
link actually. We
yeah, that's a
can,
good
so people
idea. You
can have a
can
look.
revisit. I've got different hair now.
Yeah, mine's grown somewhat, I think, since then. We had lovely Sylvia
We
from
did.
Oz
Hey, Sil,
then.
if
So,
you're watching.
yes, lots of love to Sylv, who's doing all kinds of stuff out in Oz, fighting the good fight still. But yeah, it was what did we have going on? So a year ago, we were talking about a few things, but it was big news actually. There was a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we just
Okay.
had the vaccine passports implemented for the larger venues.
Yep.
They'd mandated the injection for care workers, and I think they were either just talking about it or it was either proposed or it was coming in for NHS workers as well.
Yes. Yeah. It was. It was. I don't think it had actually come in yet. At that point, but it was on the cusp, and it was. Yeah. So that was all happening. Obviously, that didn't work out quite how they wanted it to, depending on your point of view, I suppose. Unfortunately, a lot of people did feel pressured into giving up their bodily autonomy to keep their jobs.
But a
But
lot of
so
people did not.
many, but
So many.
yeah, it was. We were talking a bit before, as we always do, and we were saying about that there was a big protest, wasn't there?
Yeah, we
Um,
did.
and it was very much focused on the NHS. Well, it was the NHS 100K, wasn't it, who really sort of pushed against it, and
Yeah, and it was
so
an enormous turnout. So that
it
was so our
was.
first midweek musings was the 15th, and we had the large protest on the 18th
That's right.
up in London on the
Yeah,
Saturday. And it was massive, wasn't it?
yeah. People
There was
were
a lot of
really.
people there. Um, and the NHS staff, I do remember it really clearly. A lot of them on the steps of Trafalgar Square
Yeah,
were laying out their uniforms, and they had, messages along the lines of, 15 years, but this is the
yeah,
hill I die on.
yeah,
They were saying no, it's not happening. And funnily enough, it was, I think, one of the only protests that was actually quite comprehensively covered by the mainstream
yeah.
media. They actually
Hmm.
did quite a lot of pieces on there, and were actually relatively realistic about the
Mm,
amount of people that were there. Whereas, normally we're seeing there's a million of us, but they're reporting, a few hundred, couple of thousand, and
mm.
really kind of downplaying it. But in this instance, there was very much, there's this large resistance. And I
It
personally think it,
Yeah, it was. Sorry, it was just. It was one of those big wake up calls. I think that's probably why it was
yeah,
covered more. Because I think, look, as much as the mainstream media, journalism's kind of dead and all of that, you do still have decent, normal people within those industries. Obviously not
you,
running the show by any means, but I think, something like that couldn't be ignored. I mean, who knows? They're always using things, for their agendas as well. But yeah, it was one that was actually sort of brought to people's attention that time. We saw it rolled back. The same with the vax passports, which was just a joke. I mean, the actual implementation of the whole thing was,
it was, I mean, it was an utter shambles in terms of sort of, you know, how it was
yeah,
going to work and everything. And
like so
yeah, I
much of
don't.
this stuff has been there, hasn't it? You know, the track and trace app. Do you remember that? Absolute farce. I mean, it just all that money spent, and just so you kind of like, you're seeing this proposed agenda rolling out, and it all seems to be very yeah, well, obviously pre-planned and very well thought out, blah blah. And then you see, then the other side of it is just this complete shit show when it comes to actually trying to
Part of me
these
wonders whether
things.
that's sort of yeah, I might be grasping at straws, but I mean, with the idea that no, there is no big conspiracy. We're all just really incompetent. So that, you know, when the
Maybe,
truth all comes out,
yeah, who
those people
knows?
that would be more inclined to just go, yeah, they didn't mean to, rather than
Yeah,
believe the truth, which is, you know, well,
yeah,
that this is a pre-planned Depop,
yeah. Well,
horrendous,
well,
tyrannical,
absolutely,
just
no question. Yeah. Um,
I don't know. Maybe they are just incompetent.
I don't know if it's a mixture of both, but you do have to wonder, don't you? You think, God, it's so anyway, yeah, those
No,
didn't kind of,
I do think that the demonstration, you know, made a huge difference, and I think the sheer amount of NHS and care staff who were willing to kind of stand their ground
oh yeah,
and just say no
mm,
and actually be out on that Saturday and demonstrate.
mm,
I think there was a lot more than they expected. I think they expected a lot more people to cave. Um,
mm.
and I think it's certainly, I do think the protest made a difference
Oh,
personally. People
absolutely,
will
and
argue that till the cows
yeah,
come
and
home, but
well, and even, you know, that for those that didn't make it, so the protest, you had people just saying no within those industries.
and that's what we were saying, you know, a year ago, is that actually, you know, the protests, yes, they are important, but they're not the only thing. You know, the biggest thing we can all do is this mass non-compliance of just
That's
saying
it.
no, I don't comply, I'm not going along with it. And you know, that's one of the things that hasn't changed, you know, over the
No,
last year. That's still kind of where we both sit, really, I think.
yeah, absolutely. It's, and it won't change. That is the only way out of all of this stuff, because it is done by consent. Yes, it might be coerced, it might be manipulated, you might be threatened, but in the end, it is down to us as to whether we do submit. And yeah, it's like, which is the hill that you choose to die on. I mean, ours were very, very soon into this. It's like, I'm no, no further. Um, so it's always down to us going along, because it cannot happen without the people doing these things. But we're seeing they try to then sneak these things in through the back door. So we had the G20, which I
Yeah,
spoke about a few
recently.
weeks ago, yeah, a couple
Yeah,
of weeks back or something. And they've, you know, you've got all the cronies there from the World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, you know, all the usual suspects, all flying in there on their private jets while they're telling you to cut back on, you know, don't heat your house more than 18 degrees.
the hypocrisy is
If you can put
astounding,
it
isn't it?
on in the first place, the heat, you know. But yeah, they basically signed, oh, I can't remember, what was it, a pledge or an agreement or whatever, about the digital IDs to be implemented worldwide, and that includes
The vaccine passport.
vaccination status, and also very vague. It wasn't about COVID. It's just vaccination status. That could be on any number of jabs that they try and introduce.
And then
It
now
has,
this mRNA nonsense has exploded. There seem to be a lot in production now for things that we've never even worried about before.
no,
You know, they're now going, oh, don't worry, we can get a jab for that. You know, for example, like with the strep, that's they're now developing an mRNA
of course they are.
vaccine
But
for that.
yeah, and I was actually saying, wasn't I, this is going viral. So this is in the UK in Parliament last night. Andrew Bridgen, MP, I'm not sure who he's MP for, but he was speaking to an empty House of Commons even, because as soon as he said what he was going to be talking about, the mRNA jabs, everyone basically got up and walked out. But it's filmed. I'll put the link. We'll have a few links probably today. But anyway, but basically a whistleblower's gone to him, and it turns out, surprise, surprise, a prominent leader of the British Heart Foundation, which they've been dodgy as, you know, unfortunately, like a lot of these charities for years. A prominent leader of the British Heart Foundation has conspired to cover up research linking mRNA jabs with heart inflammation. And it's apparently very clear data. And he's calling for, you know, all those mRNA jabs to cease, like from now.
And he said that the reason he covered it up was because he needed the
apparently
funding from the pharmaceutical industries in order to keep.
Because they're funded by big pharma, which is surprise. Why do these, you know, these charities for cancer, heart, blah blah, whatever it is, why do we never seem to get anywhere? We're never anywhere nearer to having a cure or you know, really effective treatment. Who's funding them? Big pharma. And this is why he's kept quiet, because the funding. And don't think about you know, I'm not talking about people lower down the ladders who I'm sure are in these charities and different things for very good reason. The ones up there, do you know how much they get paid? The CEOs of these charities. So if he's someone prominent in there, he's not worried about the money for research, which goes round and round and round and never seems to result in anything. It's their pay packets.
My cat's determined to walk on my laptop. But that, I mean, that's a general thing, isn't it? You follow the money, you follow the funding, and you find out, you know, all of these conflicts of interest and all kinds of things that mean that things are covered up, and we're not hearing the whole truth. And sadly, these are things that never make it out to the mainstream media, where obviously the majority of people, in our experience, you know, that's where they get their news from. And unless they're telling them that this is what's going on, they don't have a clue.
Going to.
Well, of course they're not.
It's never going to happen. We were saying earlier about this is the issue. It's the majority of people are still looking to mainstream media. Even people who are, I guess you'd say, partially awake, they're still watching the news and still believing a lot of, because it's that indoctrination, it's that conditioning. You hear someone, you know, stating things as fact, and unless you really have been down the rabbit holes and you do get your information from elsewhere, and you really, I think the crux of it is this: there is tremendous evil there, and people don't fathom it. They still don't believe that the government wouldn't do that, people wouldn't do that thing, like these charitable organizations. It's only when you've looked really into these things that you I mean, remember Oxfam, that whole expose. Do you know what? I was the least surprised person that you could I would have been shocked if there hadn't been all kinds of stuff going on. They are fronts. Everything's an inversion. So this is what they do. The very thing that, like, the health industry or health system is designed to destroy your health. Banks are designed to destroy wealth. Education's designed to destroy intelligence,
intelligence.
creativity, all of it, everything's switched around until people can really understand.
I do wonder how much of it is that people genuinely don't realize, and how much of it is very much a not wanting to.
Yeah,
Because I think,
Stockholm
once there
syndrome.
is, well, there's also, it's a case of, once you kind of realize all of this stuff, you then have to decide if you're going to
What are you
shut up
gonna
and
do?
let it happen, or if you're
Yeah.
actually going to, speak
Hmm.
out and do something.
Yeah.
And it's a decision a lot of people don't want to take, and it does take things like, these the vaccine passports and mandates, for the NHS, that sort of made a lot of people, that was their
Yeah.
line.
Mm. Yeah, that's
And
the
I think
thing,
we're going
isn't
to
it?
see this
Where's the
again
line? Yeah.
as we're seeing it all developing. Obviously, they are still continuing with the vaccine passports, and I think there's a little kind of creep towards trying to keep the COVID going, but I think
Mm.
most people have kind of they've it's
Yeah.
dropped their eyes over that a little bit. So they're coming up with new things. But we're seeing, things like the smart cities, and these
Yep.
climate lockdowns
Yep.
kind of coming in.
So you're not allowed to call climate lockdowns.
No,
God
no, no.
forbid. It's all to save the planet
It's
and to reduce the pollution, blah, blah, all of this stuff. That's the guise that they're doing it
absolutely
under, but
nothing to
you
do with,
mustn't call it.
surveillance, control. Nothing
God,
to do with that.
no, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do that, would they?
They just want to help. They just want to help.
Yeah, so we've obviously I talked about the thing in Oxford and Canterbury, and obviously this is going to be rolled out. They're the test sites for, yeah, they are essentially climate lockdowns. You're restricted to your zone and you're not allowed to travel outside by car.
You need permission
And you getting
to do
permission
so.
to blah blah. I've done a lot. If you scroll back, you'll see a big false information plastered all over it, of course. Um, and yeah, so this is the thing, like, what it's all about the line, like, where is the threshold, where is that line that people draw, how far does it have to go? And it seems pretty bloody far for most people, unfortunately. But as we said, like, for those that don't want to face things, they don't want to rock the boat, and they're still relatively okay, nobody is going to escape this. It is going to hit you in the face at some point. This juggernaut is going to keep going, and yeah, the wheels are wobbling, and the more people wake up, the more desperate they become. But that's when they do ramp things up. We were actually, that was another thing that we said in the musings from a year ago, is that feel of desperation, how fast that things are moving almost too quickly. And
Yeah.
it does, and that's even sped up since then. That hasn't changed.
No, I think it seems to be moving in a slightly different direction. And it is this constant onslaught. Obviously, they're keeping the whole health, fear, death,
Oh, absolutely.
virus
Yeah.
narrative, constantly in headlines. With we've had obviously monkeypox since then. There's been something about camel pox from the World Cup.
Yes, that one's meant to be really bad, apparently. But I
Yeah,
remember all this before, when they were talking about, I think it was troops coming back from, was it Afghanistan or somewhere? Oh, they'd be bringing back this, and it's the same with the World Cup
yeah,
in
and we've
Qatar.
obviously
They're
got
now,
the
yeah,
strep and all sorts of things. So they're
which,
keeping it bubbling away to make sure that people don't forget that they need to be afraid, and they could catch a terrible illness and die at any moment.
and they're
That's got to stay.
literally,
But they're ramping up the other side of it, using the planet and the climate to implement all of these other measures. But we have we did see recently, in the same way that we had event 201 in the October, before all of this COVID nonsense kicked off. We had this scenario. If you don't know about event 201, please go and look it up. And there's just been another one,
yeah,
hasn't there, for
yeah.
2025?
Hmm. Catastrophic Contagion, I think it's called, this one. And this is all about the children. Surprise, surprise. Where it seems to be, you know, this virus, mysterious virus.
Of course. I mean, there's got to be mystery, otherwise it's just,
of course, like respiratory thing that predominantly affects young people and children. And what we're seeing at the moment, there's this sick count of the number of kids that have died of this strep A, almost gleeful reporting. Oh, look, we're up to 15 now. It's like literally every time. But what are we seeing? Again, a list of symptoms that includes basically any illness you could ever catch or have, you know, whatever, is once again is listed there. We're not seeing, we talked about it last week, you know, but it's these children are having this flu mist sprayed, which is, it's basically creating a breeding ground for streptococcus.
Yeah.
So, and now we're seeing this simulated
But of course, it is just a simulation. I mean, you know, the parallels between Event 201 and COVID, it's all just a coincidence. There's no reason to think that in 2025 that this is all going to play out.
It's not
no reason
planned at all. It's not.
No.
Yeah, it's, and there have been, I mean, those simulated events, they've happened before pretty much every major terrorist event.
But I think the important message would be that, you know, it's not a time to sit there and think, holy crap, and be afraid and worry that this is all going to play out. I think it's a time to kind of go, right, well, we've got a bit more warning this time, so what are we going to do? And actually, you know, prepare and plan, and sort of get our acts together so that it doesn't. You know, 2025, we've got a couple of years. So yeah, I think prepare. Don't be afraid. Don't sit there and think, oh, holy shit, all these kids are going to die. Well, no, let's not let that happen.
Yeah, I mean, this is where they really get people, though, isn't it? Children.
With any luck, it, you know, I mean, as I've said before, and I go on a lot, you know, my kids are kind of the driving force between. My pushback is what gives me the motivation and the strength to kind of keep going, even when, you know, you feel the weary weight of the world on your shoulders and it's like, oh God, I can't do this anymore. You look at their faces and you're like, yes, I can.
Yeah.
I can't just sit back and go, no, it's too hard, I'm not doing it. I've got to keep going for them. You know, it's so, you know, with any luck, it'll be a few more people will kind of get that.
Well, yeah, and it's like we've said, you know, with this, they do get more desperate, and it's because people are waking up more. I mentioned earlier when we were having a chat about a couple of posts from the government websites on social media. So you've got one, this, oh, is this about celebrating 2 years of COVID vaccines? And
I've seen that one quite.
There's
comments
literally
joyous.
The comments, I couldn't see one that wasn't absolutely shredding the whole, you know. And you also have people that have said that have had it and have said it's the worst thing I ever did. I was bullied into it, blah blah blah. There wasn't one that I could see that was actually remotely positive. So when you see things like that, it gives you a bit of a jolt when you've been feeling like, my God, we are such a minority and everything's just going steaming ahead and so on and so forth. But then you have these little like polls and things that they've quickly removed off Twitter.
Yeah, we talked about that, didn't we, a year ago with the GMB poll? Those in favour of the vaccine mandates, it was 89% disagreed with it, and so it was promptly removed.
Gone.
No.
and it was
That doesn't help us.
thousands of people that had,
I think it's about 45,000, I think,
yeah,
had
so it wasn't
responded
some little.
before they.
So there are those things, and there was one about energy bills, that there's help, and I think it's some insole like 25 quid towards your, and I don't even know if that's a one-off payment. I don't know, but again, like reams and reams of comments all bringing in like the agenda. And so,
And that's another thing, that we said this time last year, that as we move forward and as more of this is pushed, more and more people are waking up. And I think over the last year, I have certainly, within the people that I know, who this time last year were, praise the jab, thank goodness we've got the jab, we can all get back to normal. And and in the last year have done a complete 360,
yeah,
and are now kind of talking to
yeah.
me, coming to me and saying, well, what do you think about this, and what do you think about this, and this is happening, and I'm not sure how I feel about it, to the point where they're now saying, no more,
I
no
think
more,
the
and they're
scales
really
have
acknowledging this
fallen.
now.
Yeah, I think the scales have fallen from a lot of people's eyes, because for every hypnotized person that will just absorb and parrot out, the narrative, there are the ones that are going, hang on a minute. So we were told we have this thing, and that's it. You're protected. You're protecting others. As a vaccine is supposed to do, to immunize you, to make one immune. Of course, they've changed the definition now, because whoops, hang on a minute. But there are the people that,
Definition's been changed all over the
oh,
place.
all over the place. But there are those who still have like a brain cell on active duty, who are questioning and saying, well, hang on, the whole premise for this, as much as they've tried to chop and change it, and then it was, oh, well, it'll reduce how serious the the illness is if you get sick. And then you're reading about people that have had all the jabs and boosters and died of COVID. We know what they've died of, but it's gone out of the window, the whole thing. So, and actually, I was reading something
Yeah,
to you
I was
earlier,
gonna
wasn't
I was
I?
gonna say, yeah, about the
Listen
pilot.
to this. Yeah. So this is someone's posted this in a Facebook group, I think, truther kind of thing. So, my husband has been a pilot for over 23 years and was even a pilot in the military at one point in his career. Never until this year has he ever had to, while training in a simulator, practice for when a pilot suddenly, and goes catatonic and slumps over and just dies while in flight. Well, this year it's now part of the annual training and simulator practice. Apparently, it's happened several times where he works. So now they're officially training for this scenario.
I mean, it says everything, doesn't it?
It does, and
It
this is
tells you everything you need to know.
it.
They can try and hush it up as much as they
And
want,
that's what
but
it is. It is a hush up. This kind of thing is going on everywhere. The thing is, it's there, all these different things. And if they're not reported in the mainstream, which they're not going to be, you've still got the
the illusion.
majority of people. It is an illusion. It is
It,
an illusion.
but there's enough in the media about these sudden and unexpected deaths of previously healthy young people, explosion of people going from absolutely healthy to stage 4 cancer in a
Mm-hmm.
matter of weeks.
Mm.
And there is so much of it that there is no escaping the fact that this has only happened since they started this rollout, and there are a lot of people. I think a lot of people are still generally kind of keeping quiet and just kind of
Mm-hmm.
quietly just going, no, I'm not having any more, I don't want to be a part of that anymore. They're
Mm-hmm.
seeing the link and they're stepping back. I think a lot of these people aren't actively shouting and screaming about, look what's happening, but it's definitely happening. It's definitely happening, and it's not it's not being able to be covered up anymore.
No.
I mean, they're doing their damnedest, obviously, but I think the majority of people are kind of, realizing, which is heartening. But I suppose it's just a case of wondering whether they'll be able to apply what they've learned now about the risk you're taking when you take an experimental, unknown substance in your body, and the potential ramifications of that, whether, in a few years' time when they do it again, whether that lesson has been learnt or not.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? We were saying before about how you've got a lot of parents who took the jab, but they weren't going to get the kids done. They were like, no, they just instinctively, like, why would you? It's just been approved for 6 months and up, hasn't it? And so
makes me very angry.
So they won't have that, but then they'll go and get them flu jabbed. And what's in the flu jab? Is anyone asking? Or the spray? Well, we know what the spray's causing, but what are in those jabs? Because they just want needles in arms.
Okay.
Doesn't matter what it's for, and people have to be very, very wary of that, because it's going to be the same, in my opinion. It's going to be the same thing that they're injecting, and it's that joining of the dots. And this is when it comes back to that they wouldn't do that.
I think in fairness, it's very, very difficult to push back against the amount of, since we were born, the amount of programming and indoctrination and false information we've been given about literally everything. It is really, really difficult. Even I find in certain areas, there's this mental block of like, no, it can't be. Using my logical brain, I'm sitting there and I'm seeing the evidence. I'm going, well, it is. That's exactly what's happening. But it's still very, very hard, and it takes a great deal of kind of strength and mental strength, emotional strength, to really kind of push past that cognitive dissonance that sort of says, no, it can't possibly be happening. And it's very, very difficult, and I think it goes back to those of us that are aware. Actually, we do kind of need to be compassionate towards those people who are kind of coming through that stage now, and especially those that may be having the juice floating around them. They've got that added concern of, shit, what's it doing to me? And as much as, yes, it's a time for, we all need to just wake up and get on with it, and the pussyfooting around, as we've talked about, that's kind of over. But at the same time, I still think there needs to be a certain level of gentleness with people, because it's not easy. It's not easy.
No, it certainly isn't. It's always just been incredibly frustrating to know and to watch it unfold and to try and warn people. But again, we said almost from day one, things are going to have to get really, really, really bad for people to wake up, to be that confronted, that there's no getting away from it. And well, we're seeing it, aren't we? We are seeing it, and the question is just like, well, how bad? How bad? But again, as we said in the video from last year, you've got to keep your balance. You've got to keep, it's a marathon, not a sprint, the whole thing. And it really is, this is playing out over, I cannot believe that
Bring on 2023. What have you got?
3 years. 3 years. I remember vividly, it was a couple of months in, I think, if that, and they were already talking about at Christmas if there might be lockdowns, or Christmas, it was sort of unthinkable. I mean, we knew in the back of our minds, well, this is it, they're going for it. So, but at the same time, it was just, oh my God, all that time when this could still be going on. We can imagine living in this heightened state of fear and anxiety. And yet, here we are. I mean, you do sort of acclimatize, so, and it's not always, you know, they sort of back off and they go in. I don't know.
There is, and there's the different prongs of attack.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
it's hard to keep track of, though, isn't it?
But,
It sends you looping.
yeah, but here we are. It's nearly 3 years, and
It's mental, isn't it?
it
Absolutely.
really is. It really is.
Certainly very interesting to see what next year is going to bring.
I think we were talking about it with who was it now? Oh, when we did the interview with Kath and Lisa from PHA about next year being a pivotal year with all kinds of stuff. So we just I'm just gonna hunker down a bit over Christmas. Live in my little bubble.
Yeah.
You know, just knowing obviously but just having that kind of just leave me alone for a week and let me just have my little fantasy land where everything's all nice and cozy, and then just get prepared for whatever next year throws at us. But we're still standing. We will
every
still
week,
stand.
even in minus temperatures.
Yes. Yeah. -6 here today.
We're at -3.
But this pesky global warming, which
Right.
I know they renamed climate change, but it's still very the glaciers are melting, the sea levels are rising, so they might not say global warming as much, but it's like, well, yeah, well, if things are melting, that kind of implies, really, doesn't it, that
They're not melting.
They're not.
It's more sea ice now than there has been over 20 years, I believe. But anyway, that's another that's another video. We're running out of time again. We've nattered away again.
As usual.
Yeah, cheers to a year of Midweek Musings. Here's to another year of our inane chatters. Thank you to everyone who watches and leaves comments and little nice.
We like reading the comments.
It's lovely. It's lovely.
Yeah. And we'll be here next week. Where are we?
Don't see why not. I'll have my kids at home, and they break up from school on Friday, so they might be jumping around. It'll be them instead of the cats.
That's all right. Adds to the seasonal fun.
Yeah, I'm seasonal. So my kids have got Christmas jumper day, so I joined.
I've got my Christmas
jumper and my snowballs.
I suppose it's a little bit wintry, and my Christmas blanket, but I'll have my Christmas jumper on next week, I think. Anyway, right, well, have a grand rest of the week, everyone, and we will catch up with you soon.
We will. Lots of love to everybody.
Speak to you soon. Take care.
Bye.